Call the meeting to order.
Weedman,
Aye.
Mack,
Here.
Braden,
Here.
Miller, here, Strack.
Here.
Yes.
Okay, we have a quorum. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, next I need a motion to approve the agenda. You have amended personnel report as well.
So moved.
Second. Miller, aye. Strack,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Braden, aye.
Okay, next is public comments. We had nobody signed up. Here, and next is the presentation of our 2019 audit.
Yes, so I'd like to introduce Sheridan Jurgensen. Come on up. Are you needing to connect to anything? You're just talking? Yes. Okay. We're going to want you to have a mic, and we can just hand you that one. Yep, just grab that one. Perfect.
My name is Sheridan Jurgensen. I'm one of the partners at Eater Caselling Company. I just want to take a few minutes of your time and go through the results of the audit from this year. The first thing in our audit report is our opinion. It's an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you can have under financial statement standards. And so really what that's saying is that from all the testing we did, everything that we looked at, that we felt the financial statements are reasonably stated. It also talks in there about internal controls, and it says that we don't give an opinion on internal controls, which we don't, but we do spend a lot of time looking at internal controls. Any errors, any misstatements, that's going to be caught through the internal controls of the district. So we spend a lot of time not only making sure the policies and procedures are in place, but that people are following them. So we're actually sitting down with the people who are processing those to make sure that's being done. In the financial statements, there's various parts. The first part after the opinion is the management discussion and analysis. And that's just really a good summary that I always recommend that board members read. Even if you don't read the whole audit report, which I understand is totally boring, I get that. But that gives at least a good overview of what happened during the year, as well as just an overview of the audit report and what it includes. There are two sets of financial statements, and I'm not really going to focus on the first one just because it combines all the funds and it also includes long-term debt, fixed assets, and so what I like to focus though on is the fund financial statements. And so on page 15, one of the things that we look at is how much cash reserves are in hand at the end of the year. And we always recommend that you have at least 3 months reserves. And then on the other side, once you get up to about 18 months, that's when you can start to get tax objections. So you want to be somewhere in there, in that middle. And so just looking at your operating funds, so your education, O&M, transportation, and IMRF, the only one that is under the 3 months is transportation, which is at 2 months. All the rest of them are between 7 months and a year. So within that range. On page 17 and 18, it shows the revenues and expenses for each of the funds, and it shows a net loss in total of $219,000. Overall, all the funds were positive before transfers. The only one that was negative was capital projects, just due to the project that occurred during the year. The other thing that we do issue is a management letter, and in there it just gives recommendations, concerns, et cetera, that we found as part of the audit. There's 2 comments in there. The first one is related to some material entries that we had to make as part of the audit. That really has to do with, then the second comment, which is just about reconciliation and making sure that all the balance sheet items are properly reconciled at year end, which was not the case when we came out for the audit. So we've talked to management, and they are aware and working on that. Then the other thing that we do, that we're required to do, is do an audit of your federal awards. Since you have over $750,000 of federal monies that are coming in, we have to audit that as well. And there was no issues or findings related to that. Then finally, the other thing that we do is prepare the AFR that goes to ISBE. And one of the things they calculate is your financial profile on a scale of 0 to 4, 4 being the best. And you're currently at a 3.6, which is in the recognition, the highest level for ISBE. So that's just a quick overview, but I am definitely able to answer any questions you have.
Well, without reading it first, kind of limited on what I could ask you, so.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else.
Were you surprised by anything? Did anything catch you off guard? Or is there anything specific we should be attending to?
I think that the management letter is the most important. That's really where any concerns that we found are in there. So just the reconciliations are really the big thing, making sure that that internal control process is taken care of timely and for sure by the end of the year when we come out.
And that's a commitment that we've made, certainly. Sheridan, if we have board members who, after the meeting, have reviewed the audit more closely and then have questions, can we just funnel those questions through me and we can get them to you or someone else?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
From that,
Yeah, I can answer anything, for sure.
All right. Thank you
All
so
right.
much. All
Thank
right.
you. Have a good evening.
And we wish you a good evening, as much as you're welcome to stay for the rest of the board meeting and take the role of all of the empty seats. We don't expect you to do so. Thank you.
Okay, next are board reports. Do you have anything to report out?
I have a question about board reports, or about a board report. So since we joined EdRed, we're all getting communications from EdRed, and we're getting them pretty frequently because it's the spring legislative session. So they're coming fast and furious, sometimes multiple times a week. I'm wondering, would it be helpful? I mean, I know you all can read that at your discretion, but I also know you're really busy. So I was wondering if it would be helpful for me to provide kind of a legislative highlights to you from what I'm reading, or if you would rather just read the emails as they come in.
Well, I've been reading as I can, but if you have anything that specifically needs to be highlighted during the board reports,
Well,
probably be.
Yeah, there was a couple things around. There are some bills that they've labeled hot bills, and I think one of them we should be aware of, which is there are some bills coming out of the House Revenue and Finance Committee that would impose a property tax freeze for school districts. They would trigger a freeze, including the amount of money we have in reserve. And so EdRed's position is that a one-size-fits-all bill is not going to solve for anything, and so they're definitely in conversation. But they've advised us to be thinking and talking about the impact that a potential freeze would have on educational opportunities in the district, and just probably be ready to articulate that should these move forward. So it's just, I think, something we should have on our radar for them. And then the other thing that I know everybody gets IASB as well, but they just sent out at 4:46 the governor's budget address summary, and he's pushing for a $350 million more for EBF, which is great, but he's holding $150 million of that in reserve pending the results of the constitutional amendment for the progressive tax. So another thing to kind of look for and maybe be talking to our legislators about. IASB is pushing for that full increase regardless of the outcome of that vote. But just a couple things I thought will impact us we should have our eyes on. But no action that we need to take right now. But those were the two out of everything that came through in the last couple weeks that I thought were probably most relevant to us.
Has there been any, I didn't see any, but has there been any communication regarding the way they calculate who qualifies for like their Okay,
There has not. I haven't seen anything come, but that's certainly something that I could ask Sarah about.
just wondering, because,
Yeah,
for our school district would have greatly benefited from that program versus,
yep,
in my opinion, the one across the street, but,
yep.
that's- just wondering how they, if they have any other feedback
Thoughts
on
on
that.
Okay.
So are you wondering if there might be another way to calculate so that they're not separating high schools and elementary schools and?
I'm not quite sure how they did need, I
Ah.
guess. Our sister school district in the district or in the area has, a decent amount of reserves, whereas we're short on our reserves. So how are they calculating who they're giving the extra money to? And, they got it 2 years in a row, and actually technically 3 years in a row now,
Yeah.
because this last one was over a 2-year period. So whereas the other districts who probably might be in more financial need are getting left on the side of the road.
So, and the reason I asked that question is that what we know is that, that school districts are separated by the kind of district they are, and that's a part of the story. And I'm just wondering, if there would be another way to do it that wouldn't necessarily put a high school district above us. So we'll leave that to you to.
I will take that as an action item.
Anybody else have anything?
I went and watched the Living Lab at CLC right before this meeting, actually, which was well worth looking at, and there's some parallels in Meadowview's process and in CLC's, at least from a superficial look. So it was really fun to see how they're incorporating bioswales, and the students are driving that, similar to how the students researched and installed the French drain at Meadowview, and the signage was similar too, and then some connections to wellness that might be salient to the healthcare decisions that we have to make.
Superintendent report?
Yeah, well, there's a lot going on tonight, which you might, as evidenced by the fact that there's nobody here. So GMS has family reading night going on tonight in the library, which is why we're in this less cozy space. All of our elementary schools have kindergarten meet and greet this evening, which I am, as much as I love being at board meetings, I have to admit I'm very sad not to be at any of those. And next year we will for sure get that scheduled on a non-Board of Ed meeting night. And kindergarten registration, by the way, will be on May 5th. May 5th? No, March 5th. I wrote May 5th. That would be very late. March 5th. So, tonight is the meet and greet, and then registration starts on March 5th. We had a truly magnificent half-day institute day last Friday, and I'm going to ask Paul to talk about that.
So thank you for that. On Friday, we did have a half-day institute. Earlier in the school year, we had sent out a needs assessment to all of our staff specific to our one-to-one rollout of the Chromebooks and technology in classrooms. And so we got feedback from every building, all levels, to identify their greatest needs. So I'm proud to say that our info specialists worked very hard to create sessions to meet the needs based on the needs assessment, exactly what the teachers were asking for. So that was the majority of, we had 3 one-hour sessions. So 2 of the sessions were specific to digital tools and Google tools. So digital tools was one session and Google tools was the other one. Our third session either was about vertical articulation or content meetings. It was different based on different grade levels and the needs. So it was really great. Just to give you a flavor, and I'm going to read fast, the thing that I loved is we had a significant number of staff members who stepped up and agreed to do some of the presentations. And so I'm just going to name names because it's really important to recognize. Clay Trahan, Kai Mashopoulos, Katie O'Brien, Tim Yoder, Julie Ways, Sarah Plishke, Stephanie Nicoletti, Leanne Salas, Jen Edwards, Melanie Palo, Amy Schneider, Sarah Peterson, Vicki Ewan, Jill Tarnowski, Megan Jansen, Lilia Erb, Corey Henney, Jean Mall, Mary Murphy, Lisa Lazarus, Becky Payleitner, Kim Miller, Sam Riesman, Amy Leachman, Taylor Hamrick, Cherie Jacobs, Deb Sutton, Catherine Mahoviak, Krista Miller, Tim Timmons, Daphne Krupa, Rachel Clausen, Emily Clements, Meredith Kurtzwell, Tammy Singer, Leanne Pickens, and Kelly Kurtzwell. That's a whole lot of staff across the district to share their expertise and their information with their colleagues, which sometimes is difficult to get up in front of all of your friends and colleagues and to share. But I'm publicly sharing my appreciation to all of these people. We'll be following up with a letter for their files as well, to just say thank you for all their hard work. So far, the results have been very positive in the survey that we're working, getting back. So it was a very positive day. The half day goes very quickly, as you can imagine, and so it was busy times. Instead of bringing all of the staff to one building, we had 4 locations. So we had 2 schools partner up, Meadowview and Avon partnered up, and Prairie View and Woodview partnered up, and GMS and Frederick partnered up. And then because of Park's location, Park stayed by themselves to work through all of these things. So it was a good use of time. It cut down on travel, all those kind of things. So we were conscious of all those things when we're putting the planning together. So it was a worthwhile day for everybody.
Thanks, Paul. It was great. Quick reminder of the Jazz and Friends event at the library on the 27th of February. That's a joint project between our school district and the Grays Lake Public Library. We'll be reading I Am Jazz along with other topics or other books related to LGBTQ. I'm one of the readers, and there are going to be snacks. So a reminder about that. And finally, today was the final day of our district-wide Kindness Warms the Heart Challenge for staff. So all of our staff members who met the challenge by doing a whole bunch of activities got a little gift that was put together by Sue, so thank you. They all got these little pads of paper that says CCSD 46, Kindness Warms the Heart, pad of paper, because how convenient to be able to continue sending little notes to people, notes of kindness. So thank you for putting that together for us, Sue. And this is Random Acts of Kindness Week. And day and week, depending on who you ask, and there's all kinds of kindness activities happening for students throughout the district. And that wraps up the superintendent report.
Community Engagement Committee?
I don't think we
I
have.
don't think we have an update at this moment.
Okay. How about the Equity and Inclusion Committee?
Please.
Well, it snowed.
Canceled.
There was a
It's
very
snowed.
big snow. And that is all I have to say.
How much snow did they get?
It was a lot of snow falling during, and people had the flu, and the messages started pouring in of who wasn't going to be able to make it, and we were grateful for knowing ahead of time, and we sent out the message about who can make it, and it was a very sparse group, so that's a long way of saying we canceled the meeting last week.
Okay, next is I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Braden,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye. Next are our action items. First action is a motion to approve the registration fees for pre-K through 8th for fiscal year 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, hold on.
Hang on a second, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. I know it says pre-K, but is the actual, we did add it, okay. We went back and forth so many times about the pre-K that I wanted to make sure we did add it into the chart. Never mind,
And that didn't change.
and there are no changes to it.
None of the fees over
No
for the
changes
next
to it.
year has changed.
That
so we're
is
just
correct,
re-upping at the same price.
that's correct.
All right. So we have a first and a second.
I moved in, I think Chrissy said.
I
Chrissy
seconded it.
Yep. That's all right.
No, that's good.
Weedman,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Braden,
Aye.
Aye.
All right, next is unfinished business. Going or no? Next is new business. First is a first look at the fiscal year 2021 school calendar and waiving legal holidays as required under Public Act 960640. Veterans Day, President's Day, Lincoln's birthday, Casimir Pulaski's Day, in order to hold school.
Do you want any commentary about that calendar?
You worked with the union on this?
Worked with the union on this. We aligned the winter break and the spring break with District 127. It's not possible to align start date and end date. It doesn't work. And the other piece that I just want to point out is that this year we had 3 institute days at the start of the school year. That was because we had so much new curriculum. And next year, we won't have a whole bunch of new curriculum to share with our staff at the beginning of the school year. However, we had a really wonderful conversation with our union about the fact that there would be new instruction and information to share later in the school year. And so that was really a shared interest that we wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to share new information with staff, but maybe not right at the start of the school year. And so we took a look at the calendar and selected the Friday prior to Columbus Day. We have Columbus Day as a day off anyway. District 127 also is off the Friday before Columbus Day. We're going to have this additional Institute Day that day before, that Friday before Columbus Day. So our students will have a 4-day weekend, our families will have a 4-day weekend, except for those who work in the district, and our staff will have the opportunity for some excellent kind of very timely professional development in October.
Is the late start process working for the teachers? You get feedback that that's still a good way to...
Yeah, we're having some ongoing conversation related to the times that the meetings end, but in terms of whether it is good, useful time for collaboration, but yeah, we have feedback on that. Want anything there? Nope. Okay.
Any other questions on that? Next is a first look at board policies. At tonight. Give the highlights.
Is that me?
Sure.
Oh, good. Okay. So,
Pass the book there.
yeah, I did. So, as is very often the case, the majority of changes that are recommended from press, which is the organization that we use to update our policies, most of those changes are related to changes in law and don't significantly change our practice. There were, however, a few policies that the board members who are part of the policy committee wanted to bring to the board at large. And so would you like me to walk through those specific ones? Okay. So does all of the board have access to the individual policies?
Online.
You're online. Okay, great. Okay. So policy 480, accounting and audits. And the conversation that the policy committee was having was about a recommended change to the capitalization threshold. So as a reminder, there is a point at which our purchases are considered capitalized and therefore have to be reported upon differently. Our current threshold in our school district is $2,000. So under that threshold, it's not considered a capitalized good. The recommendation through press is raising that to $5,000. It makes process a little bit easier. Mary Whirling did get in touch with our auditors to make sure that they didn't have any concerns about that change. And she specifically asked if there would be any concerns in relation to our grants. And the auditors did not have any concerns about that. But our board members who are part of the policy committee thought that might be something, making that change might be something for the board at large to discuss.
Unless there are no questions.
Accounting change.
Is there any risk to it?
There's no risk to it. I mean,
Figure what the
it's,
dollar amount change is.
It makes it easier for you to do what you need to do, right? Okay.
the next one that was recommended for discussion was, definitely not this, wait a minute. Yeah, yes. 4190, targeted school violence prevention. So this is a brand-new policy that press is bringing to us, and it is optional. You may remember that in the fall, Heather did a presentation on a new, help me.
Threat response.
District threat assessment procedural requirement.
Thank you. The threat assessment procedure. That is required by the state, that we have this new process and procedure for threat assessment. And then press is kind of following that by writing this optional policy that putting that into place into a policy. So we are already putting that process and procedure into place, but we certainly can have a policy that requires it. Heather did do a little bit of checking with some of our local districts to find out if they were adopting this policy, and from the people that she heard from, they indeed were. We haven't found any particular reason not to make it a policy. And again, all the things that are in this policy are things that we are already doing, but because it's optional, I think the board members on the committee wanted the board in general to discuss it, have an opportunity to discuss it.
Particularly because it's new. It's a new policy, that's why I thought it'd be good to talk about.
So is it pretty much
In
the
line with
threat
what.
assessment? I mean, that's pretty much what it is. isn't it?
Exactly.
It's just
Yeah.
codifying it, like,
What
Yeah,
other
and
are-
Heather said that there was, under Press Plus 6, there was a liability coverage somewhat for the board, for the district board, by having the policy in place as well. It gives us a limited shield there, worked for our advantage. Since we're already doing it, and sounds like most school districts are putting it together in line as well. I heard anything.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, and then the last one that I think you wanted to discuss was in 7270, administering medicines to students. This is a pretty robust policy with a few changes in it, but specifically the piece that the board members on the committee wanted to discuss is the addition of having a backlog, is that the right word? A stockpile of glucagon for students. And Heather, will you talk about that? I see you
Yes,
already
I
have the
actually
mic
was
in
able-
hand. Good.
I was able to talk to our nurses. I'm going to stand up because I feel appropriate
Thanks.
doing so. Okay. So what I've learned in my time sitting here is that it is stored at room temperature. It's an injector that is usually done in the thigh. So it needs to be mixed because
But
it's
can
not
you explain
pre-
what it's for? 'Cause I
I'm
didn't do
sorry.
that at all.
I'm sorry. It's for
Thank you.
students with diabetic needs whose sugar goes so low, and at that point where a student can't chew or swallow, and you can help me out maybe a little bit more. It initiates all the sugars in the system, correct?
Yeah, it releases the stores in the liver of sugar.
So usually a call to 911 would happen first, but then that would follow for students who have that order from their endocrinologist. So the benefit of a stockpile is to have it available for anyone who has such orders on file in their diabetes care plan. I was asked to double check the affordability. I looked on GoodRx, which is a good app to look for coupons for medicines at cost, and it's looking about $300 per prescription in the area around us, and that's without insurance. I asked, and it lasts about a year, expiration is about a year. I asked our nurses what their thoughts were on stockpiling. They said in all the students that they work with, the endocrinologist has it prescribed and their parents are prescribing it. The benefits would be maybe an employee. We've had a recent employee who was running a little low who might need access to it. And then they thought, well, if there's an affordability issue for a family to not be able to have some at school and at home, it could be something to be considered. But again, it's a district decision on whether we feel it's necessary.
So we're looking at about $2,000 a year probably, right?
Correct.
I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but I think we should understand, like you were getting to, Jim, the likelihood that we're going to need it at all. If it's for people, for kids who have a prescription, is it for kids who have a prescription but don't have it available?
Correct.
Correct? That's got to be a pretty
Because an
small...
endocrinologist would make those orders
Yeah.
to when a student would need it in a series of events of intervention.
That's got to be a pretty small population, I would imagine.
Correct.
But
A sense of how many students have those orders right now in their district?
Right now, we have a growing handful. We've been seeing that uptick. But it's isolated to right now about 4 buildings, but it's growing. We have 2 on the docket for other buildings. So it's almost even relative to what students attend what school.
so, I mean, actually, if we got a year's supply now, it would probably last for a while.
Well, they expire every year.
They
Oh, they
expire
do
every
expire
year,
every year.
yeah. Mhm, yeah.
That would be a replacement cost.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. Okay. Never mind.
Jim, you had some comments earlier about calling EMTs.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be giving that, I would assume that they would be calling 911.
Is that timing, like that 4 or 5 minutes? Sounds like it's pretty critical. Is that why?
Well, I would assume if they've got to the point where they're already given that injection, because they, like she said, they couldn't chew, they couldn't swallow already, that they're already compromised, so
Yeah.
I would assume 911 had been called already.
Yeah.
Before you give that, because the glucagon, like I said, it releases the stores in the body, and that can take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes for it to actually kick in. So if you're already at that low, and that's the trick is, you may see it with newer diabetics or somebody who is sick. So maybe they've had the flu the last couple of days, they really haven't eaten, and then they come to school and they kind of get drained down and their body, eats up all that sugar before they realize that they're in trouble. Most diabetics, as they go along in their life and their career, they've learned how to manipulate their sugar intake. They'll eat a Snickers bar or candy or drink some orange juice or whatever, so they get pretty good at it. So for a new person, it might be, and for a kid, it might be a little bit difficult too, so I'm not trying to dismiss it. Around here, and where our schools are, you're looking at an ambulance being there probably within 6 to 10 minutes, if not shorter. So by the time that glucagon actually worked, the paramedics would probably be already on the scene. The stuff we give, typically, if we give an IV, if we have IV access, works a lot quicker than the glucagon. Now, I'm not saying one way or the other. If you had, a store of 1 or 2 at each school, and it saves 1 life, then it's worth the 1 life. I'm not dismissing it either way, but just trying to give the background of because we have glucagon on ours too, but that's our last On our ambulance, that's our last discharge. Because it takes so long. And then the person has to get transported. For us, the person has to get transported anyways. Because what it does is it releases basically what's stored up. And if you drop again, you have nothing left to give. And the glucagon isn't going to work again. So they have to get sugar.
Jim, can you use honey? Is there a substitute for that?
For
the glucagon that's,
well, it's
food-based?
prescribed. If they're able to, swallow and chew and and is conscious enough, they can drink, a soda. They can take a
Right.
candy bar. They can orange juice with sugar in it. For us, we even try that stuff prior to giving them an IV and pushing sugar into them. Usually they're unconscious when we start putting sugar.
okay.
If they're capable of talking to us and they know they're low, then we'll give them, a glass of orange juice. We'll dump sugar in it and it pops them up.
Yeah, I know in the wilderness, we just use honey in there because you don't have to
Those are
swallow.
options, yeah.
It goes
Some-
right. you
There's,
just do it right
there's
in.
paste too that you can put in oral, for lack of a better term, like an oral gel that you put in there.
Right.
And it does the same thing. It's basically frosting, pure frosting. So it's the same, there's different ways to do it. But with this policy, it's basically saying it's our option to have some extra glucagon on. Again, if it saves one life, then
Yeah.
it was worth it. The question would be, is that what we want to do, and then how much?
I mean, I would say yes, and should we have
Do
two?
we store it at only the buildings that we have known people that have it?
Probably.
If we only have 4 students, would you say 4 students now? 6 students
We
now?
have more than that, but they're only at 4 schools.
About before, I had to double check that because there were some in the process who are seeing anything else, but it's about.
And likelihood is probably slim, in my experience. But you could probably get away with 1 at each building, or 1 at a building where you have them. And chances are 2 of them have it at the same time.
Very
Slim, yeah.
But the only other question I would have is how many times have we had to actually administer the kids glucagon in the time frame that we've had them here? And I know that's an answer that you probably can't get right now.
As a director, which is about 10 years-ish.
There's the other end of it too. Like I said, usually they get really good at maintaining their sugar levels by themselves. There are obviously instances where you can't. And I'm no expert. Just my opinion.
The way it's written, it looks pretty wide open about how we would implement. So I feel like we would have the flexibility to make sure that we had glucagon just at the schools where we have students that have those prescriptions. So, now we're talking about 4 schools this year.
Or even if we have like a known related issue, to have the flexibility to stockpile if we know there's a disparity somewhere that we can identify.
I'm not sure I
It's just my
understood that.
thought. So if we have a student who may have some economic needs, where we know there's a known issue, if we already have that agreement that we would do under those circumstances, could be an option,
So
is
it
what I'm
allows us-
thinking.
Yeah, it allows us to, it doesn't require us to. What you're
Right.
saying is, it would allow us to say, there's a specific situation where we want to stockpile because we
Yeah.
know.
I'm not seeing
that there's an issue.
specifics to all or nothing, but.
Lynn, do you have?
I'm not sure. I'm feeling like if we adopted it the way it's written,
Yeah.
what this says that we shall implement this law and maintain a supply. So, if we adopt that, I'm
have to
interpreting
have
that
at
to mean
least
that we
one
need to.
somewhere.
Shall.
Exactly. So what feels flexible to me is simply where it is.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, it's logical to me that it is where the students are who have those prescriptions. So, so if we're going back to cost, now we're, this year, now we're down to $1,200 to implement that.
And, you know, that was a quick look on cost too.
Right,
It might be able to get
exactly.
less.
Exactly.
Does it set the precedent that we will have to stockpile other meds? Do we stockpile EpiPens
Yep.
or anything
We
like
have
that
EpiPens already.
Does it? I don't know.
I mean, I
if
think
we
we're
asked.
only allowed to do that with certain medications.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, we could be continuing to chase other laws, but this is coming from a new law that allows it.
And if I understood Heather right, it comes in like an auto ejector similar to an EpiPen.
Right.
So very few, I don't know how many drugs come in an auto ejector where a layperson could have.
Good question, yeah. Well, that's why we have a little time to think about it, right?
Yeah, maybe have the nurses weigh in.
Is that a conversation that the nurses have already had?
Is there, maybe have the nurses weigh in too on whatever, you know, what on the need wise.
And they don't necessarily feel it's necessary. And one just said, only in these circumstances would she even consider it, which is what I listed, maybe a staff member or someone who can't afford those environments. I think Jimmy made a really good point at our meeting that our access to emergency access is relatively close. Some of these are really good for rural areas, not to say where that access is there. But that, I don't know.
I can count on 0 hands how many times I've seen Glucagon used in the back of our ambulances. It's always been get an IV access and start pushing the other one. It's quicker.
So do board members want to consider this over the next few weeks? Is that what you want? And then, so then when we get to the policy portion of the next board meeting, do you want us to pause to see if there are more conversations? Do that. Okay, and that was it for policies. I mean, there were other policies, but those were the ones that you two wanted us to talk about.
The rest of them were all basically law changes or affected by a law change.
Okay.
Okay, next is topics for future agenda items.
Oh. We should have the results from the garbage bid next time, I hope. We'll look at the calendar again, correct, Sue, right? Look at the calendar again? Yep, we'll look at the policies again. And then not at the next board meeting, but I want to bring this up since we talked about it for this board meeting. I did speak with Val Donnan from CEDAW, the superintendent at CEDAW. She's going to come not at the next board meeting, but the following one, on the 18th of March, to do a presentation for you about just kind of CEDAW updates, what's new and happening at CEDAW. And I made sure she understood that our board will be looking for information that addresses concerns that have been shared, that are out there in the public, that our board is not looking just for, hey, here's all the great news, but we know that there have been concerns that have been raised. How are they being addressed?
Will she be prepared to answer questions?
Say it again?
She take questions, she'll be ready to answer questions if we have them? Okay.
So that's what I have for next meeting and the one beyond.
The only thing, I had 2 things that I had talked to Lynn before, so I just figured I'd let everybody else know, and if you have any questions, please bring them up. I was looking for a kind of a status update of what we've done with our EBF funds, what the ones that we got at the beginning of this year, and what the plan is for them going forward, as we did the strategic plan for that. And the other one was kind of a readout on where we're at with the one-to-one technology. So by the end of the school year, it was been 18 months since we implemented the one-to-one technology, roughly. So where is the usage? How are the teachers using it? Are we cutting back on how much time they're using, paper taken home, or are they doing it work on the computer? That type of a readout of how that program is going, so that we have an idea. We spent $340 $1,000 on that program, is it making the impact that we're expecting? Those were the couple of things that I had asked. Not looking for it, like, obviously, today.
Right.
You know, probably over the summer or whatever for at least the one-to-one, and then,
Well, the EBF one we can do next time.
okay.
That'll be pretty simple.
But you're gonna give them to, like,
Yeah.
at least if you did something for after the end of the school year, then you have the whole year plus the last semester of last year.
Wait, we're talking about two different things.
No, him and I are talking about the same thing.
Okay. Okay, so the EBF one we can do next time, and then we'll look probably in the summer for doing the one-to-one.
Yep.
Perfect. Can I borrow your pen?
Wait, am I gonna get it
I'm
back?
not sick, and yes, we'll get it back. He does know.
Yeah, she warned us ahead of time.
I did.
She steals pens.
It's true.
All right. Anybody else have anything else? Anybody else have anything they would like to add? Let's see, public comments. Then I need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second?
Miller,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Brady.
Aye.